Hello Orchid friends, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time watching my video, my channel is all about orchids. From what orchids I have, how I grow them, my thoughts on certain orchid topics, to what orchids in my collection are blooming, etc. So if you want to follow along my orchid hobby adventure, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on the notification. Today we're going to look at my Phal yellow Pixie. This is one of my favorite orchid types, and I have a total of 6 yellow Pixies, and I bought them on 3 different occasions, so each time I bought 2. And this video is going to focus on the middle batch, so the 3rd and the 4th one that I have gotten. So if we go back in time, this orchid started to show signs of spikes around end of December 2019, and that's typically the time that this orchid will start elongate from its existing spike or develop new spikes. So in other words, this orchid is a sequential bloomer. But what I've noticed about this orchid is for existing spikes that rebloomed, after the flowers are done, this flower spike will retire. So in other words, all existing spikes will only provide rebloom one time and then they will die back. But these orchids are pretty resilient because almost every year, at least one of them would have new spike emerging. This year, I think out of the 4, I have 3 of them have new spike, and then the other 3 bloom from existing spike, so it's about half and half. Another interesting thing about this orchid type is that most of the time, almost always, it bloom in the multiply of 2 or 4s. Only one time last year and then one time this year that it was a 3-flower combo or a 5-flower combo, but most of the time for all of them, it's the in the multiply of 2s. This orchid don't really require a whole lot of special care. For the most part, I keep them relatively dry. Every time I water, I would only provide about 1/4 cup of water, and this solution is with a 25% strength fertilizer. So it's a weekly kind of situation. But at the end of the month, the last watering cycle, I always make sure that I soak these orchids really well with just pure water. And the water that I use is reverse osmosis water. It's a little more expensive than regular water, and that's why I typically would try to save water whenever I can. So the soaking does take up a lot more water consumption, but I think it's necessary. I am going to start experimenting soaking orchids with tap water. I recently moved, not recently, last May I moved to my new house. So I'm in a slightly different area in Texas, and the water here is cleaner than before. My water is medium hard. I think it's just below 200, but now my tap water reading, ppm reading, is between 120 and 150. So it's still probably higher than I like. It's not considered soft water, but it's lower ppm. So I'm thinking maybe I can get away with soaking orchids with tap water. So I'm going to select a few orchids this year to do that experiment. If everything goes well, you know what? For the soaking, I will just go ahead and use tap water, and that way I get to save even more reverse osmosis water for when I need to, mix with fertilizer. This orchid is very fragrant. The smell is really super sweet. It's like honeydew sweet smell. And in the morning, it is really strong, very easy to detect. And then the smell would gradually dissipate, and pretty much in the early evening. You really have to put your nose close to the flower to even smell anything at all. But overall, I really enjoy having these orchids around because when they're in bloom, the color yellow is just super stunning. Especially if you have a little bit of sunshine shining on them, the yellow gets intensified even more. You may have noticed that they are still in their original media, in original container. What I have done since I purchased them is just put them into a 16-ounce plastic cup as an outer container. And the reason I do that is there are a couple benefits to this approach. One is to kind of self-quarantine, self-isolate them in case there's anything hiding in the media. It's not bulletproof, but you know, it has done pretty well for me. Another reason is, well, if I am soaking this orchid, that cup can be used as the soaking cup. So I don't need to get additional container just to soak them. And this has been pretty useful for me. And also, I think the top, you know, the outer cup also provides additional barrier but still enough ventilation, but I think it just holds a little bit more moisture in, and it keeps because I only provide quarter cup each time, so if without outer cup, I think quarter cup would get absorbed or evaporated in a matter of 4 days or so. But right now I have kind of played around with the water ratio enough to know quarter cup inside of this bigger container, you know, that would be enough for about a week. In other words, you know, 1 week is around the time that the wet dry cycle will complete in my environment, and that has proven to be really helpful. And judging by the way the media mix, it's a mix of bar chips and sphagnum moss. Judging by the look of that, I think this orchid can easily stay in that media and the container for another year. The oldest two yellow pixie I got, they're more like the pluric type, and then the second and third batch are more regular cultivar. Those two, the first two, they are getting a little tired, so I think I will have to repot them after they finish blooming. I mean, one of them is still working on a new spike and maturing its buds, so that video is yet to come, but I'm starting with these two because they just finished blooming first, and I figure, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and share these bloom with you. Yeah, so for those two, I'm thinking I'll have to repot them, but these two, the second batch, I think I'm gonna, you know, keep them in the original container, original media for another year. And usually when I feel the need to repot certain orchid, assuming the orchid is healthy, no root issues, no pest issues, it's because their performance is not as good as previous year, right? But this year, for these two orchids, they perform as expected, and the size of the flower, the count of the flower, the rigor that I can see through the leaves and roots, I think they're still doing pretty okay. And they are, you know, getting by with quarter cup of water, quarter strength of fertilizer once a week. So far so good, and you can see the latest leaves are also bigger than previous ones, so they look pretty darn happy. At least for now, they look pretty healthy and happy, so I think I am going to keep them in here. You know, I don't want to fix anything that's not broken, because sometimes when you repot them when you shouldn't, you actually would do more harm than good, and I really don't want to set back these orchids because every year they provide me with really lovely smell, fragrance. I love them. And the best thing is I got them for under $10 each. I think it was $8.99, so it was a steal. And you know, out of all these years going to these grocery store chains, I've only been able to bought them on 3 different occasions, so they're not really that common either. So this is really just a matter of luck. But anyway, check out your local grocery store like Trader Joe's, maybe you will have the same luck. And if I were to give a grade to these 2 orchids, I would say that they are receiving A- for me. This is all I have for you today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you would like to get more orchid related videos from my channel, please subscribe and turn on the notification. I want to wish you happy growing, and I will talk to you in my next video. Ciao!